Joining me today is Jim Rubens, who's running for the U.S. Senate in the state of New Hampshire. Jim, in our last segment, we were talking about sort of the budget issues.
Right.
And when we went to commercial break, we dealt with the military.
Yeah.
And I want to use that to segue into sort of national security.
Yes.
But I want to make sure if there's one more point you had on sort of the budget, you had about 60 seconds to sort of wrap that up.
Yeah, to balance the budget without tax increases and to shrink the size of the federal government, which is what we need to do. We're also going to need to bring down the cost of health care. And Obamacare it's increased the cost of health care. So we need to repeal and replace Obamacare with spot treatments in places where the private healthcare system is not working well. And on my website, jimrubens.com, you can get into the deep wonkery of this stuff. I have a 14-point plan, and I'm not going to get into it here.
We wouldn't get to national security.
We're going to get to national security. So I'll stop there and just say jimrubens.com. You can look at how we need to bring down the cost of healthcare.
We'll get
That's
you
a critical piece of
that.
how we balance the federal budget. We can't balance the federal budget until we bring down the cost of healthcare. So national security. We have a failed system. Our national security policy, our military policy, particularly with respect to global terrorism and the Middle East, is failing. And I'm going to call it Hillary Clinton's failed nation-building wars. They have these nation-building wars, most recently in Libya, Syria, Iraq, contravening the clear prior warnings of our generals. Our Pentagon warned these people who have implemented this. And I accuse Hillary Clinton of this wrong policy.
Who was the Secretary of the State at the time?
At the time, and Senator Ayotte, who has followed, cheerled Hillary's process. We have intervened in Libya. We now have ISIS in Libya. We've intervened in a manner in Syria and Iraq that has led to the expansion of ISIS. They're now operational in 8 beachhead countries. They're operational, obviously, in the United States and in the United States. So we need a policy by which we keep America's safe from ISIS and asymmetric warfare that works better. And again, I bring you to my website, jimrubens.com. There is a detailed set of plans, and it begins, and I'm not going to go through the 14 points here, but it begins with acknowledging that the process used by Senator Ayotte and Hillary Clinton has not worked. Americans are not safer as a result of these failed nation-building wars. What do we do? First of all, you've got to cut off the money. Our so-called allies, Saudi Arabia, is the world's leading sponsor of terror ideology worldwide. They have funded the madrasas. They have funded the promulgation over 20 or more years of terror ideology. This is why there's homegrown terrorism in the U.S. and Europe. We have got to tell our so-called allies, Saudi Arabia, stop funding terror. Number 2, Turkey. Turkey has an open border with Syria, the northern border there, and Erdogan's son has been a conduit by which ISIS has, through the black market export of oil, contraband, human trafficking, has funded itself. Our so-called ally, NATO member Turkey, we've got to hold them accountable to stop funding terror by virtue of the black market funding sources for ISIS.
How does the Senate do that?
We have to change security policy in order to do that. A senator can first talk about this in public. Do you hear many U.S. senators talking about the failure? We hear bomb it until turn the desert to glass, put boots on the ground. Here's the problem about boots on the ground in the Middle East. General Petraeus showed us how we can win with boots on the ground in the surge in Iraq. It requires clear and hold. You have to go through city by city, block by block, building by building, and root out the terror, okay? And we have the best military in the world. Our soldiers are the best in the world, amazing heroes. They can do this job. Here's the problem. You have to stay there for 2 generations, because the second you leave, these people are cockroaches. They will simply go underground and they'll pop up in a different country. So are we going to intervene in this fashion, the clear and hold David Petraeus strategy, in 8 countries? We're not going to do that. So number 1, cut off the money flow. We've got to hold our so-called allies accountable. Number 2, we need to stanch terror ideology. And this is a cultural war. And on my website, my Facebook page, I've cited some scientific research that talks about how we stanch the promulgation into Europe, into the United States, San Bernardino, et cetera, of homegrown terrorism. And again, I'm going to point you to my website, jimrubens.com, for more detail about all this. But we need a root cause policy, a root cause national security policy to defeat and contain ISIS and terror, because the one that's being used by these people, Hillary Clinton and Senator Ayotte, is not working.
So we're out of time in that segment.
Okay.
When we return, we're going to continue and focus back to the U.S. and focus on domestic issues and jobs. So please stay with us.